How would you define non-duality, Francis?
Non-duality could be put in a nutshell by saying that there is only one reality. It's a deep intuition that we all have. It's this deep intuition, for instance, that uh, um, that is at the origin of physicists seeking the unity behind the diversity, the reality, the vacuum, the physical reality of the universe, etc. It is also the same intuition that there is one single reality that gives birth to a religion and the notion of a creator, of a reality in which we move, we live, we have our being. So this intuition that there is only one reality cannot be proven. It is something that we all know, as Kant would say, a priori.
Mm-hmm.
It's an a priori knowledge. Just as we cannot prove that there is consciousness. We all know we are conscious, but there is no scientific evidence of it, as we can prove gravity by allowing for an object to fall.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness is such an intimate experience that there is no objective evidence of it. However, if one would negate the reality of consciousness, that there is consciousness, everybody who could hear him saying that would laugh at him because they are hearing him saying that. So non-duality could be summed up by saying there is only one reality.
When we say that can't be proven, usually I guess we consider things that are commonly experienced by anyone and repeatably experienced as provable. For instance, gravity. We all experience gravity. We've all stumbled and skinned our knees and dropped things and so on. But, there aren't too many people around who can say with certainty that they have experienced consciousness in its pure essence or its pure form.
Let's be clear about it. I don't think there is much that the fact that there is consciousness, that we are conscious, is in doubt.
Right.
Everybody, it seems to me, would agree that there is consciousness, that we are conscious. The disagreement would be as to the nature of this consciousness, and on one very specific point, most of us believe it to be limited, to be personal. Most of us believe that there is one consciousness for each body-mind entity.
Right.
And in fact, they believe that, and at the same time, they believe that there is a full body of evidence in support of this belief. So they believe that this belief is a fact and not a belief. But in fact, when we try to find out what evidence there is, if any, that consciousness is limited, separated, etc., strangely enough, it turns out that we find no evidence whatsoever. This belief, we have inherited it from our ancestors at a very young age, from culture, education, parents, etc. And we take it for granted, simply without questioning it. Yes, and in fact, when we live under the assumption that consciousness is limited and therefore dependent upon the body and therefore mortal, there is something in us that revolts against that.
Mm.
You know, if it were absolutely true, there wouldn't be any revolt.
Right.
You see, the fact that there is some revolt shows somehow that there is something fishy about it. and that as long as this problem won't have found its solution, we will be seeking.
Yeah.
There will be a sense of lack. This sense of lack is expressed in different ways at different times on different parts of the world, in different civilizations. It may be seeking God as long as I'm separate from God, or it can be seeking the ultimate reality of nature, of the phenomena, and as scientists do. But there is a common goal, a common mission of being born as a human being, which is this search for the truth. I would like to add something to complete the definition of
Sure.
non-duality. I said it could be put in a nutshell by saying that there is only one reality, which is, as a result of that, the reality of everything. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
Now, this seems to be a very innocent and almost tautological a statement or axiom. There is only one reality. But if we go into the details of its implications, we find stunning things. For instance, if there is only one reality, which is the reality of everything, consciousness, this fact of experience, and if we ask, what is the reality of consciousness? And the question, what is the reality of consciousness, could be put in a slightly differently by asking, what is it or who is it who is really conscious? Who is conscious in reality, right? Or what is the reality that is conscious? If there is only one reality, the reality that is conscious must be the same in all beings.
Right.
Therefore, the reality as we speak, which is conscious through this body and through that body, must be the same reality if there is only one reality.
Mm. Yeah. And which, again, as you said, has all sorts of implications. I mean, we were talking about the universal tendency to seek for deeper experience or deeper reality. I mean, it seems it's been a long time since I felt that I was just a flesh-bound individual and nothing more. But people who feel that way, there must be quite a fear, because I'm 63. I might be feeling like I'm going to cease to exist in 20 years. But of course, there's no such sense. The way I feel like I could live to 100, I could die tomorrow. Really doesn't matter. Yeah. So there's a kind of an ease and security.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. and that is peace, precisely, that we all seek.
Yes.
Knowingly or unknowingly.
Right.
Unknowingly in ignorance, knowingly when we are on the path, and then gradually we get established in it, and then life becomes just a celebration.
Yeah.
Of this presence, of this reality.
Yeah. So if consciousness is the reality of all things, then obviously it's not just the reality of you and I. It's not just it's the same consciousness speaking through us both, but it's also the reality of the couch, and of the lamp. And
yes, that's why I express it to be more precise, more. Although it is true to say consciousness is the reality of all things,
ultimate reality.
I think it's better to express it differently by saying there is only one reality, and therefore that which is the real consciousness is this reality.
Right.
You see?
Right.
Because then there is only one reality, people can easily admit to it, or they can say, yes, there is one reality, that is the reality of the subatomic particles, that is the reality of the distant galaxies and of this entire universe, that
Yeah.
is the reality of matter, of everything I touch, I know. And that is also the reality of this body. And if it is the reality of everything, it is also the reality of this mind. But what is the reality of this mind if not what we call consciousness, you see? And that's when everything comes together, because up until that moment I thought that this reality, which is very intimate, and it is, was not only intimate, but private, which it isn't.
Right.
You see? Consciousness is intimate, but not private. We all share it.
Yeah, we share consciousness, obviously, but then, you know, there seems to be still an individuation which is very convincing. If let's say you bang your finger with something, the pain is felt there, and although I might be compassionate for you, it's not felt here.
Well, in fact, it is not true that the pain is felt there. When you feel the pain,
Yeah.
you say the pain is felt here, right? But where is this here?
This body. The body feels pain. I mean,
No, the body is felt.
yeah.
The body is not that which feels.
Right. It's
The body is located in
Yeah.
space. But how do you know that because the body is located in space, consciousness is?
I'm not jumping to that conclusion. Right.
Yeah, but when we say the pain is felt there and not here, we assume that consciousness is there feeling the pain and
Oh, I see
not
what you
here.
mean. Yeah, no, it's sort of paradoxical because, you know, I'm agreeing that consciousness is everywhere and ultimately is everything, but then there's the ocean, but there's still waves rising up, and you know this wave experiences its.
But the problem is when we say the wave experiences.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
wave doesn't experience. Consciousness experiences the wave.
Yeah.
You see? And that's a fine point. When we say the wave experiences, the wave is the mind. And we identify consciousness with the mind. What is important is what they call in India discrimination.
Right.
Discrimination between the perceiver and the perceived, between the transient and the permanent, and between consciousness and the objects of consciousness. Look, right now we are filming this dialogue, and there are cameras there. And we could be also webcasting this dialogue, right? And the fact, what is seen through these cameras are this room here in San Rafael, California. And based on what is seen, we could say that that which is perceived in San Rafael, California.
Yeah.
But in fact, the webcast can be perceived anywhere in the world. So the fact that that which is shown is localized somewhere doesn't imply that that which perceives is localized at the same spot. It implies that some instruments through which it is perceived, like the camera,
Right.
is localized at the same point, but not necessarily that the receiving end, if you will, is localized at the same point.
Yeah.
In fact, in the case of consciousness, it is not in space or time. It is non-local, you
Right.
see. But we make this very simplistic assumption, which is extraordinarily simplistic, not simple, simplistic.
I've heard you use the term, you know, self-realization, awakening, enlightenment, and as I understood you when I was listening to recordings, you use the term enlightenment as with reference to sort of the first clear glimpse of pure awareness or pure consciousness or whatever you want to call it, whereas then terms like realization or something would be more stabilized, mature state. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Let's assume someone is digging for water
Mhm.
for a well, and as they are digging or drilling deeper and deeper, at some point they encounter wet soil, if you will.
Yeah.
You see, and then finally, at some point,
There's a gusher.
there is yes, there is a geyser, you know,
Right.
and so there is real water.
Right.
And when the water that was there under pressure surges, for instance, in this metaphor, that would be enlightenment. There are glimpses prior to that, glimpses of proximity.
Mhm.
They are very important.
Right.
But the real turning point takes place with the realization that consciousness is universal. That which in me perceives this seemingly ordinary consciousness is in fact the eye of God, through which God sees its creation. And so that's a turning point, because there is a revelation of the immortality of what we are, of the infinity of what we are, of the absolute splendor of what we are, absolute love, and the revelation of absolute happiness. You see, absolute peace and happiness. So, and the revelation that which we have been seeking all along finally has been found.
Yeah.
You see? So that's the end of the quest right there.
And obviously, when you're saying this, you're referring to a very deep, rich experience. You're not referring to some sort of intellectual notion of it.
No.
I interviewed a very sweet man about a couple of months ago who had been a Trappist monk for decades, and he had this very profound awakening, and after a while he decided it was time for him to leave the monastery. A couple of weeks later he emailed me and he said, I'm still getting probably 40 or 50 emails a day from people asking me questions who I would guess have maybe had a momentary glimpse into the absolute reality, or at least a relatively clear conceptual grasp of it, and then it fades and disappears. It seems that many then cherish a memory of this experience and form conceptual philosophical beliefs around the memory. They then try to convince anyone who will listen that they are fully enlightened, which I am often relatively sure they are not. I try to be gentle and kind to people and quietly suggest that they may have some more work to do, but many won't listen to me at all and become very defensive and try to prove to me that they are more awake than I, which maybe they are, and I really don't care or know, frankly. So I mention this and take the time to read it because I kind of see this a lot in my interacting with people in this milieu. There are a lot of people who seem to grasp an intellectual sense of what you're talking about and then mistake that understanding for the realization to which it only points.
You are absolutely right, and it seems to be to me to be one of the major difference between the traditions, you know, in Buddhism or in Advaita or in Christianity for that matter, or Sufism, etc. In the tradition, the first glimpse, even a total glimpse, what a glimpse is an insight into consciousness. Now, there are two kinds of insights. There are insights that tell us what consciousness is not. And these insights are very useful, but they are what I call the partial glimpses. And there is a full or final insight, which is the revelation of consciousness itself in its universality. Mm-hmm. You see, so the partial glimpses tell us, for instance, someone believes, I am the body. And then he hears a teacher saying, you're not the mind, you're not the body, you are that which perceives it. And he says, that's true. I'm not the body, I'm that which perceives it. Is that a total glimpse? Not. But is that a glimpse? Yes. Because in order to realize that, he has to look into consciousness and compare it with the body and make this distinction between the consciousness that perceives and the body which is perceived. And as a result, he realizes, I am not the body. In other words, a partial glimpse is a negative glimpse. I realize what consciousness is not.
Right.
Sudden realization, I'm not the body. Yeah, I am the consciousness, not the body. So there are many glimpses of that, because the same can be, I am not a thought. I am not the mind. Or another glimpse, the teacher can say, you know what? You think, but thoughts don't think. Thoughts are thought. Therefore, you are not a thought. You are not the I thought. That's also a glimpse. And, is that the final glimpse? No, not yet, you see. But so these glimpses are important in that sense that they pave the way to the first final glimpse. So now we are talking about, various levels of teachers. There are teachers who teach the partial glimpses they had. Mm-hmm. There are teachers who can teach, who had the final glimpse, and they can take one to the final glimpse, provided at that moment they are open. If the student is open, then the thing takes place. The transmission takes place, requires openness of both sides. If the teacher is open only at certain moments, and the student...
They might be out of sync.
Exactly. If the teacher is established in peace, usually the meeting, something happens. There is a connection in love, a connection in something that touches us deeply, that we recognize it.
We started this conversation talking about non-duality and saying that consciousness is everything, or everything is consciousness, whichever way we want to put it. And if, we agree that that is the case, so it would seem that as spiritual progress continues, one would not only reach a state at which one lives the distinction between pure consciousness and relative phenomenon, and realizes that this body is not conscious and so on, but one would reach a state at which one would actually apprehend the consciousness value of the couch. And in other words, the real non-duality, to my understanding, would be a complete, all-encompassing wholeness. There's a kind of preliminary stage, it seems, at which there's sort of a separation of consciousness from the world, but eventually the world is subsumed, and it's all this one thing.
Yes. That the saying of the Sufi is, wherever the eye falls is the face of God.
Yeah.